There's a fine art to writing great headlines. You've got to be punchy and provocative. And that's what a writer at a small Manhattan newspaper says he was trying to do, only to have it blow up in his face.
Say what? That's how readers responded to this opinion piece in the Westview News, a neighborhood newspaper in New York City. Even pixelated, you get the gist. But author James Lincoln Collier says the outrage was intentional.
That was the whole point of this, that a great many people in the United States continue to think of President Obama as the There's a substantial amount of racism still existing in the United States, and that's how I expressed it in order to get that point across as strongly as I could.
Unfortunately, readers didn't see it that way.
I see his point, but I think the fact that it's a headline in this paper, which represents the West Village, is disgusting.
When somebody else uses this and splashes over a newspaper, it offends me.
Some advice to the Westview News. Don't let the headline bury the story.
It's unusual to me. This guy must have come up with his own headline. That doesn't usually happen on the editorial side, but it's a small newspaper, so he must have said, oh, and by the way, I want this to go as the headline. Is he the editor, too? Didn't anybody say this is not a good idea? Not one, talk about having a good editor, John. Not one person down the line said, I don't think so.
Well, the 86-year-old editor-publisher of the vaunted Westview News wrote a little note saying that they agonized over the headline, but he decided to let it go ahead. And his rationale was that this would never appear in the New York Times, so that's why we need to run it. What? Of course, everyone thinks of the Westview News as a counterweight to the New York Times in all instances. I mean, this screams publicity stunt to me. I hope and pray, whatever else happens in the rest of my miserable life, that I'm never stuck at a dinner party next to James Lincoln Collier.
Yeah, really.
Taking an important subject and just burying it with banality and exploitation. And, you know, who's ever heard of this paper and who will ever hear of it again? But this is not a word that should be used in civilized discourse. I think it's an open and shut case. And you know, to claim that there's some justification for throwing it in the headline to make a broader point, this just exposes the dull-wittedness of everyone involved.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah. No need for further discussion, clearly.
You pretty much said it. You know, I am just continuing to be appalled and just disgusted by not just the cavalier use of the word, but for people who believe, as this guy did, that he's above the word, you see. So the bite of it doesn't really impact anybody if he's using it.
It's ironic.
It's a, you know, it's a little something, to your point, he could discuss at dinner party and say, boy, I really got them, blah, blah, blah. This is part and parcel of, we've discussed this on Basic Black, this whole hipster racism. I'm above it, so I can use all these terms. No, you're not. You know, in the end, the bottom line is just plain old racism. I can't even hear you, whatever your point is in your piece, because I can't get past the fact that you didn't have enough common sense to know this was not workable.
What if they had used asterisks? Did that have any difference?
No, it wasn't that good a piece.
No, really.
I mean, it was lukewarm at best. I mean, I look back a couple of years ago when Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote on a similar subject
called Fear of a Black President.
Right, in much greater depth, with a lot more nuance and understanding. And as you said, the cover line in the Atlantic was Fear of a Black President. Somehow they managed to find a way to get the point across without using the N-word. I mean, I doubt that they would have put an F-bomb in the headlines, although maybe they do. I don't know the paper. But this was just totally inappropriate. And for some, you know, aging white guy to say, oh, look at me. I mean, it was just distasteful.
I must say, though, I mean, I'm encouraged by the common sense of the people on the street in the village who were interviewed in that piece, and I've seen other interviews, who uniformly, black, white, left-wing, right-wing, saw this for what it was, just vulgarity.
Probably is meaningful to them. It's like the Back Bay Courant or one of those these
absolutely.
little tiny newspapers that do have some significance in your little community. So I'm sure they were upset by that, even though none of us have heard of it.